We knew there were going to be some giant moves from the Chargers on Wednesday, like releasing Mike Williams, which did happen. But what we didn't see coming is the Chargers showing us they are not going to be rebuilding because they are keeping Khalil Mack in 2024.
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, and welcome into the Locked On Chargers podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Wade, joined as always by my co-host, David Drogemeyer. And we've been covering the Chargers together now for 8 seasons, but this is our 6th year as a host of the Locked On Chargers podcast, bringing you your team every day. Thank you guys, as always, for making us your first listen. We appreciate all the everydayers out there, especially when we get big news like on today's show. And to make sure you never miss it, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listen wherever you get your podcast from. David, what do we got today?
Daniel, we start with a very pleasant surprise. Khalil Mack will be back with the Chargers in the 2024 season after he agreed to restructure his contract to give the Chargers some more space. And unfortunately, the inevitable did have to take place, and that was the Chargers releasing wide receiver Mike Williams, which it just had to happen. You know, they needed that $20 million in cap space, and so that was a move that did come to fruition. And then we got to talk about what happens next. So many different things on the agenda. Let's get into it.
There's still work to be done. That's the biggest part here. What happens with Keenan Allen now? What happens with Joey Bosa now? We know they did what they needed to do. They got under the cap. But now what, right? That's where we're at with this team. There's still work to be done. But today's episode is brought to you by GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. David, we knew it was going to be crazy, like I said, but we didn't know exactly how it was all going to go down. But when we talked on yesterday's show, we had said, hey, what you should do is do as little as you possibly can so you can keep all of the other avenues in play. And that's exactly what the Chargers did on Wednesday by releasing Mike Williams. They found a way to only, get rid of one of the big 4 contract hits. And we'll see, down the line how much that changes or if another guy goes, because it feels like Joey Bosa feels like he's on the block too. But the biggest statement to me, though, David, was the Chargers finding a way to figure things out with Khalil Mack. This is from Adam Schefter, 8-time Pro Bowl defensive end and former defensive player of the year. Khalil Mack will remain a Los Angeles Charger this season and free up salary cap space for the team by agreeing to restructure his deal. Per sources, Mike Williams leaves, Mack stays. We'll talk more about the restructure, but David, to me, this is sending a clear message in the Chargers saying, hey, we did what we said we were going to do. We have a really, really tough salary cap situation to deal with, but we're going to find a way to put the best team out there as possible in 2024. And when you do things like this, you're following up the words with some action.
You are. And honestly, my reaction was just genuine shock. I just didn't even really put this in my mind as a possibility that could happen.
Well, I think too, if they would have traded Bosa first, then it's okay, it makes sense. But to have them all still 3 at this point where they're at right now with no Bosa trade yet, that is surprising because we always hoped it would be Mack if it was between the two of them, right?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it doesn't make a lot of sense with their production on the football field to keep Joey versus keeping Khalil Mack after Khalil Mack just had a phenomenal season. But it was very shocking, but in a very good way. I was very happy that they were able to make that work because Khalil Mack is that type of leader on and off the field that makes a big difference. And it is the Chargers saying that they are doing what they said they were going to do, which is do everything they can to stay competitive and keep their good players. There's no way that you can put the tape on for the 2023 season and not watch Khalil Mack go absolutely insane for 17 games. It was a treasure to watch. They keep a very, very important, very impactful player on the team for the 2024 season.
Yeah, their best defender the last 2 years, full stop. Right?
By far.
Super durable, super dependable, great leader, great locker room dude, brought a different level to this team. I think the other thing is from the get-go, we talked about Harbaugh's guys. We did stuff like that, right? We're talking about this team trying to change its identity. The one person that doesn't need to change anything and he just keep playing exactly like he's playing is Khalil Mack because he already embodied all of those things anyways, right?
Exactly.
Super tough, super physical. One of my favorite plays in recent Chargers history, though, is just him going up to Drake London and ripping the ball out of his hands like he was a small child.
Like taking candy from a baby.
He's a grown man, and he showed last year after the foot surgery, right, that it took him a little while to recover from, probably even into the 2022 season, that he's fully back now. And he got talked into coming back, and it was a great thing he did because he set the franchise and career record with 17 sacks last season. And David, it's just hard to quantify exactly just how much that helps this defense. Knowing that you're going to have Thule, knowing that you're going to have Khalil Mack at the very least, starting right there. Plus, it's just surprising. We don't ever hear, hey, this guy's staying with the team at this point, right? Because they still could trade him. Like, that's still a possibility. But they're saying no. Ian Rappaport is saying, like, hey, he is staying. Mike Williams is leaving. It's just crazy to me, David, because it's like, or Adam Schefter said that, like, you don't ever hear that, but like to have this dude on Jesse Minter's defense, like you brought up on Twitter, like giving him that toy to play with, giving him that chess piece, like it just gives you so much more hope that this defense can really turn things around this season.
I mean, just as a reminder for people who don't know how special Khalil Mack was last year, 74 tackles, 21 tackles for loss, 17 sacks, 5 forced fumbles, 22 quarterback hits. He was an extraordinary leader from the moment he got traded here. He was a guy that was galvanizing his team, trying to bring them out for team outings, to try to bring them closer together and keep them, in the thick of it and focused on the ultimate goal. He was an enforcer. I mean, I think some of my favorite plays from Khalil Mack was seeing him in run defense just go from one side of the line to the other like a freight train and absolutely destroying running backs. And I mean, hits that you can hear. Even if you're not there, you can hear it. Like that's the impact that Khalil Mack was bringing to the table. He was just a total complete football player last year. And you want to see that continue. And I don't think there's any reason to expect him to really decline. He still has that strength. He still has that intelligence. He still has that really peak physical performance. And man, having that in Jesse Minter's defense, knowing that you have a player of that caliber to be able to spearhead what you're trying to do with your new defensive scheme, I think that's got to help Jesse Minter sleep a little bit better at night.
Well, and even with, potentially Bosa being on, we'll talk about, if this means he's very much on the market and they're going to aggressively try to move him. Even when you take that out of account, right, like, to have the guys just that you have right now means that it puts such less emphasis that you don't need to draft a first-round edge rusher or a second-round edge rusher potentially, right?
Exactly.
You can let somebody season under Khalil Mack a little bit. And honestly, if you want to find another reason to, love Khalil Mack and want him back, keep him just for the Raiders games. The dude's played 4 games against the Raiders as a Charger. He has 9 sacks in those 4 games. The dude gets up for the biggest rival the Chargers have. But how did it happen, David? Because the biggest reason we thought he was gone was not because of his play. It was because he had a $38 million cap hit, right? And so I think how it happened is, very interesting as well. And I think it doesn't happen unless he wants it to happen as far as how this restructure went. And we don't totally know, but we have some good ideas at least.
Yeah. We don't know exactly how they made this work because, on the surface, you look at it and you say, well, he's only got 1 year left on his contract. How could they possibly restructure this deal?
Right.
Well, there is a mechanism called void years that they can add, which will help kind of change the way the cap situation looks. So with the void years, that would allow the Chargers to convert the base salary and roster bonus into signing bonus and prorate it over multiple seasons, which in turn lowers his cap hit for the 2024 season and gives the Chargers more space to be able to operate. That's essentially how the void years work.
Yeah, Daniel Popper, that's who that was from.
Yes.
He laid it out well in January when talking about how this team would be able to get under the cap. And they told us they were going to be creative. They got creative with this one. Daniel Popper basically laid out a way that, hey, if the Chargers wanted to add void years in 2025, 2026, they could save up to $14 million in cap this year and then equally distribute it the next couple of years when their books are a lot cleaner. So I love that move. It's not just totally jeopardizing the future. They still have plenty of cap. It's not like they did last year where they're setting themselves up to be record numbers over the cap. But the other thing is, too, is it just tells me that this team and this new regime got Khalil Mack to buy in because he doesn't do it unless they're telling him he's going to have a chance for a ring and he wants to stay here because he would have had plenty of suitors and there was a lot of vultures circling to see if that man got released. But
no doubt.
We do have more sad news, though. Stuff, we told you yesterday Mike Williams was going to be gone. It just didn't make sense for it to happen any other way. But you still have to appreciate everything that he's done, right? And now we know it's official. But there is also, David, a little spark of hope because Ian Rappaport says there's still a chance the two sides could reunite. So we're going to talk about that and what happens next with Keenan Allen and more on today's Locked On Chargers podcast. First, though, I need to tell you guys about GameTime because GameTime is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. With killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee, you can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for the fun that you're going to have. GameTime is the place that you want to go for last-minute ticket deals. And the other great thing is there's no stress with GameTime because with GameTime, you get the GameTime guarantee. And what that means is if you find tickets in the same section and row for less, GameTime will credit you 110% of the difference. That means you know you're getting the best price every single time. The other thing that you know is you know exactly what the price is going to be before you buy the tickets because you get all of the pricing up front. There's no surprises when you hit the checkout, and it's why it's the fastest growing ticketing app in the country. All you have to do is take the guesswork out of buying tickets with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDON, LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download GameTime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. David, we saw the writing on the wall. We knew it was going to happen. Mike Williams, after missing 18 games over the last two seasons, it was just going to be very, very hard to justify him making, or having an over $30 million cap hit in 2024. And it sucks for him because he earned the contract that he got.
Yeah.
And never really had a chance to live up to it because in those two seasons, he didn't play more than he played. And that's just the sad truth of it. But now it's official. And it had to happen, David. The Chargers needed to get under the cap by 1 p.m. Eastern time or 1 p.m. Pacific time on Wednesday. And this was the move that had to happen. We knew it was going to come. But still, man, when you're seeing all the pictures and the videos and the memories and all of those things, it still hurts. We knew it had to happen, so it made us a little bit more numb to it. But now it's official. Mike Williams will be most likely moving on from the Chargers.
Yeah, something that I think I knew was going to happen. We all felt like this was the eventual reality in which we were going to have to live in. That doesn't make it any easier because, man, I was a huge Mike Williams fan. And how could you not be? This guy produced spectacular catch after spectacular catch after spectacular catch for years for the Chargers. For 7 years, he was keeping the Chargers in games. He was making sure Phillip Rivers gave the Chargers every single opportunity to stay in football games with his just miraculous acrobatic catches. I mean, it was truly amazing to watch, to have a guy that if you threw it up to him, it was a 90-10. There was no such thing as 50-50 ball for Mike Williams. It was you throw it up, he was going to find a way to go get it and go make it happen regardless of what happened to his body, how he hurt himself. It didn't matter to him. He just wanted to do everything he could to help the team, and he absolutely did. I'm going to miss Mike Williams like crazy because he was such a fun person, such a great football player to actually be able to watch and root for. But the NFL is a business, and this is what had to happen at the end of the day. Yeah,
and there's so many, memorable moments. We talked about some of them, the Kansas City Chiefs game, the 2-point conversion for Phil, and the walk-off, running off the field. There's just so many, like Daniel Barber put in one of his articles about Mike Williams getting released and brought up that Week 18 game I brought up yesterday, the tie and get-in game against the Raiders, where in the fourth quarter and overtime, it was something like 7 catches, 114 yards, and a touchdown just in the fourth quarter and overtime, right? First of all, also just the catch he made with no time remaining just to send it to overtime, right? Brandon Staley should have went for 2. He didn't. But just that catch right there, right? When everyone knows the ball's coming to you, right? The ball has to get out. There's no time left. And he still made the catch anyways. And he just so many times is put in that position where it's almost like, the old Dave Roberts on the Red Sox. Everybody knows he's stealing the base, but they can't stop him.
They can't stop
right?
it, yeah.
And it's probably going to make me look old for even using that reference. Some kids out there probably don't even know what I'm talking about. But the point is like, everybody on the field knew the ball was going to Mike Williams because the Chargers didn't have another deep threat that could beat them there.
Yeah.
And the only thing the Chargers had to do so many times late in games was chuck it up to Mike Williams and hope he came down with it. And he always did. But just the amount of, pride I think Chargers fans should feel in watching the development and the growth of this dude from a dude who was a bust as a rookie and got written off by many of the fans, turned himself into a huge playmaker, right? A great jump ball receiver,
Yeah.
and then just turned himself into a really good receiver, right?
Yeah.
Like, and then found the all around overall game too. So super proud of Mike Williams, super happy for Mike Williams wherever he ends up. And maybe that's back with the Chargers, David, because right after the news came out, Ian Rappaport said this: the Chargers would like to bring Mike Williams back, but Mike Williams will test the market. So I like to see it. It's just hard for me to buy into it.
Yeah, well, it's a lot harder for me to buy into it after Calvin Ridley just got $90 million over 4 years, and he's 29 years old. That, I think, for me, makes it really, really difficult for me to feel like they're going to be able to bring Mike Williams back. And obviously, Mike Williams is recovering from an ACL tear that happened against the Vikings on that September 24th game.
Yeah,
and
it
he's
should
about
be good.
6 months. Yeah, he's about 6 months out from that injury. He did say that he was ahead of schedule after the season. So, I mean, obviously, we'll see what happens with that. But man, it's sad, but this is what had to happen for Mike Williams, and for him to be able to come back, that would be great. I just don't think there's any real reality in which that comes to fruition. I think there's going to be a lot of suitors, and for good reason. Mike Williams can change games for you and your football team.
Shame on you, Ian Rappaport. Shame on you for giving us this, hope that probably doesn't exist.
Yeah,
I mean, this is my thing. Like, obviously, he had a huge cap hit, $30+ million in 2024.
Yeah.
You saved $20 million by letting him go. What are you going to sign him for? Right? That still makes sense. Like, if you sign him for $18 million, you saved $2 million, right? And you're taking it doesn't change anything. Like, how low would that number have to be that he would still accept it with what some of these receivers are out there getting paid? I also think, David, like, we never really probably, maybe 2021 was the closest we got to seeing, Keenan Allen and Mike Williams healthy together at the same time, and Justin Herbert put up 5,000 yards, and both of those guys put up 1,100 plus receiving yards.
Yeah.
And it was awesome. But we kind of saw it. We kind of saw the peak of it. We kind of saw the apex of it. And it does feel like, to a certain extent, as sad as it is, that it's time to see what you can do with a different combination. New blood, see where the new heights can be, this offense can go with a new core, right? And turning the page and letting him go somewhere else to be successful. But I think the natural thing to do when you see this move is, okay, what does this mean for Keenan Allen, right? Because with Keenan Allen, we talked about it yesterday that, many different people were out there saying, like, they're listening. They might not be trying to pursue a trade for Keenan Allen, but they're listening. Does the release of Mike Williams change anything for you in that regard? Does it make you feel like he's any more safe than he was before? Because the thing is, I don't really ever felt like, they would ever release Keenan Allen over Mike, right? It never really felt like that. But do you feel any more secure in him staying after today's news?
I'll be honest, it doesn't really change anything for me just because I expected this move to happen regardless. And I've always maintained that I feel like the Chargers are going to keep Keenan Allen, and that decision is going to have to come very, very soon, more than likely, because on Sunday, they're going to have to pay him a $5 million roster bonus. And so I'm sure they're going to want to probably try to get some kind of extension done before they have to pay that roster bonus out, because if they don't, they're going to have to pay that out, and they end their ability to manipulate that type of cap hit. So I would expect that to probably happen very, very soon if it's going to happen. I'm curious to see what the numbers will look like on that contract because, I mean, as we talked about, Mike Evans got a boatload of money. I mean,
he got $26 million. Calvin Ridley got $23 million. So, I mean, that's kind of where you're looking at right now. I think it's a great point. Because extending him obviously helps you move some money around from this year, but like the thing is the dude's still going to want to get paid, and he's still playing like a really, really good receiver. It's how much does he want to retire as a Charger? Yeah. And I'm never going to ask a player to give money back or, to come back at a discount because just unreasonable. These guys are trying to feed their family. The NFL's super unfair, and there's a lot of non-guaranteed money that gets thrown around like real money anyway. So it's like, hey, get yours while you can. If Keenan Allen can still get one more fat check, he should do it. I don't think the market would be like that for Keenan Allen right now, as good as he is, at least like longevity-wise. Like, hey, if he can take a 1-2 year extension with the Chargers, Macks, I'd be happy to do it. I'd love to see him retire in lightning bolts. I think he's safe. Maybe there's still a Godfather offer, but to me, it still feels like that's what it would take. And even then, I mean, it feels like you need to add to your receiving core even with Keenan Allen. So if you lose Keenan Allen, where does that leave that room? Like a starting three of Keenan Allen, Josh Palmer, and Quentin Johnston raises plenty of questions. A receiving core led by Josh Palmer and Quentin Johnston, and then Darius Davis. raises a lot more.
Yeah, it's
But
danger level.
Speaking of roster bonuses, Joey Bosa has a roster bonus on Friday that's going to kick in for $7 million. Is that the new deadline? Are the Chargers going to aggressively try to trade him now? And also, did he refuse to take a pay cut? And are fans absolutely bashing him for it? We're going to talk about that and more on today's Locked On Chargers podcast. First, I have to tell you guys about Robinhood. Did you know that even if you have a 401k for retirement, you can still have an IRA? Robinhood has the only IRA that gives you a 3% boost on every dollar you contribute when you subscribe to Robinhood Gold. But get this, now through April 30th, Robinhood is even boosting every single dollar you transfer in from other retirement accounts with a 3% match. That's right, no cap on the 3% match. Robinhood Gold gets you the most for your retirement thanks to their IRA with a 3% match. This offer is good through April 30th. Get started at Robinhood.com/boost. Subscription fees apply. And now, some legal info. Claim as Q1 2024 validated by Radius Global Market Research. Investing involves risk, including loss. Limitations apply to IRAs and 401ks. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold for 1 year from the date of the first 3% match. Must keep Robinhood IRA for 5 years. The 3% matching on transfers is subject to specific terms and conditions. Robinhood IRA available to U.S. customers in good standing. Robinhood Financial, LLC, member SIPC, is a registered broker-dealer. David, we talked about the other big four, but the one I think we're probably the most uncertain about, the one that I think is still the biggest wild card at this point, and I feel like gets moved, is Joey Bosa, because we know they're keeping Mack. We're telling you we really believe that they're going to keep Keenan Allen. Joey Bosa, though, I'm not nearly as sure about, and there's been some rumors floating out there that they approached Joey Bosa for a pay cut. We're not sure how, valid those rumors are. But if that's the case, it feels like he's probably even more on the move, and the writing is very much on the wall. But before we get into that, make sure you guys go check out after this Locked On Sports Today, the first ever national 24/7 sports streaming channel, giving you coverage of every sport the way that only the local experts of Locked On can. That's where you want to be, especially with baseball coming up. They have a bunch of baseball specialists coming up as that season kicks off. I know I'm excited about that. Make sure you guys go subscribe to that today. Let's talk about Joey Bosa. Let's talk about the most flammable part of this first. There's an account on Twitter or X called 49ers and NFL News 24/7, which seems kind of weird just to take anything from that. They have 30,000 followers. Very respectable, more than me and you have.
Yep.
But they said the Los Angeles Chargers have approached Joey Bosa to take a pay cut, and I'm hearing that he refused. I haven't seen any notable people out there saying this as far as like the bigwig journalists, Chargers beat reporters, anyone like that. But at the same time, it would make sense. I do think it's crazy to flame Joey Bosa for this, not knowing for sure. I do think the other thing that bothers me is when I see people holding up Khalil Mack, taking a restructure, and then saying, but Joey Bosa wouldn't do that because a pay cut and a restructure are not the same thing, right?
No.
Khalil Mack's not giving back any money. But
No.
These are the facts, David. The Chargers have some decisions to make. The roster bonus for him, like I said, hits Friday, March 15th, which is $7 million. That's a big number. And to me, it feels like the announcement of Khalil Mack staying means that Joey Bosa is very likely on the move.
I think that they're trying with all of their might to try to trade Joey Bosa right now.
Yeah.
I think that's the most likely scenario. I think they did this restructure with Khalil Mack because it gives them that extra day, that extra time to be able to finalize that trade and get Joey Bosa to another team, give them some more cap flexibility to be able to make some more moves, because I feel like there's still some things that they need to add to, and they need some extra space. Obviously, they can accomplish that with a Keenan Allen extension like we talked about, or with Joey Bosa getting traded. But I think now more than ever, I think there's a high likelihood that he gets traded tomorrow or today as this show is being released. I think there's a very good chance that he's gone.
It's really interesting because I still don't know how much leverage the Chargers have, right? Because the Chargers showed, hey, we could keep these three guys and get under the cap at least initially, but now there's more work to do. So, we don't know how much the Khalil Mack restructure is. If that's really $14 million and you can extend Keenan Allen and free up another $12 million that way with an extension, then, it might be feasible for you to keep three of your big four cap hits together. You're still spreading more money down the road. They're doing that with Khalil Mack. Obviously you don't want to put yourself in the same position you got into this year. But the thing is this, if Joey Bosa is traded pre-June 1st, they only save $14 million this year, and they take a $22 million dead cap hit.
Yeah,
they
it's
could
big.
circumvent that by doing a post-June 1st cut. But in that case, though, they'd still have to give him the roster bonus, I'm pretty sure, because you're basically doing it as if he got cut later on in the year after June starts.
Yeah.
So trading him, it saves you money. You know, it's going to save you money next year, too. But really, like, next year's when it makes most sense to cut him. Trading him this year is going to do more damage than it will be good. But you might just have to bite the bullet if that's the way they're going to go. But I think now, David, the logical question is just what's next, right? Because the Chargers made a little bit of space, but they didn't make enough space by releasing or trading two of these guys to where we really feel like they can go shopping. Yet we know how many positions on this, team still need to be filled. One of the guys, because now I think it's about finding value in free agency. And there's a lot of positions, David, where they could go. You know what I mean? There's still several positions we would like to see them address before things are said and done in free agency.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I think most of those are on the defensive side, but on offense, the biggest one, the most glaring one is center. I just don't know if I want to go into the season without bringing in someone that's more of a veteran that has some experience that, you plug in and you have in front of Justin Herbert, at the very least, to produce some very good, healthy competition going into training camp. Even if you do draft a center earlier on in the draft, at least you have somebody that has experience, that's been there and done that, so you feel a little bit better about not being pigeonholed going into the season.
Yeah, and the guy that makes the most sense to me, Bradley Bozeman, is a guy that played 4 years under Greg Roman in Baltimore. He's a center, but also has experience at guard, over 2,000 snaps at each of those positions. And I think, you might be able to get him cheap. He was just released by the Panthers. He's coming off one of his worst seasons. And what you'd be hoping for in this is that you can get how good he was when he was with Greg Roman. The last 2 years he started at center both season for Greg Roman. He allowed 5 sacks and 40 pressures over the span of 2 seasons, which is actually very respectable. He's always been a better run blocker than a pass blocker anyway, so he fits that mold as far as what the Chargers want to do in improving this run game. And I think the other thing here that is going to perk up Joe Ortiz's ears, he wouldn't count against the compensatory pick formula, right? He wouldn't cancel out either of Gerald Everett or Kenneth Murray's signings because he was released by the Panthers, which means he doesn't factor into that. So a guy like, we talked about, he gave up 8 sacks last year. He's coming off a bad year. But the worst case scenario, if you bring in a guy like that who's going to be cheap, is if you don't get a center in the draft that you feel like can start, you can start him on a short-term basis and let somebody season. And if you do get a starting center, you can let it be a competition between the right guard, the center, and him, right? Because he does have guard experience as well. So at least you're pushing the other guys on the roster. You're pushing the Jamari Sawyers of the world and not just letting this interior offensive line just go in with their spots already in stone, because I think that's a bad idea. Another thing, David, I'd say quickly, we're looking at corner and defensive line. You cannot go into this draft, David, needing to get 2 starting corners out of it.
No, I mean, the Chargers right now need an outside corner and they need a slot corner. So
starters, not just bodies,
right.
starters.
So I absolutely feel like they need to add at least 1 starting corner in free agency. So still work to do. Again, I'd like to see them add a body on the defensive line as well. I think you talked about linebacker as well as another position that they could look at trying to address in free agency.
Well, that's the thing with those, right? If you have, rookie corners, you're going to have 2 rookie corners and then Asante Samuel Jr. potentially as your starters. That's, Asante has experience, but that's not a ton there, right? I mean, that's 2 out of 3 guys with no experience. Defensive line, if you only add rookies to it, you're adding a rookie to maybe Morgan Fox, who I think is still a cut candidate, and then Tito Oboni and Scott Matlock, who have almost no experience on the defensive line, right? A lot of question marks there.
Yeah.
Same thing a linebacker. If you just add a rookie linebacker, then you have basically a redshirt rookie in Dan Henley, right? You have Nick Neiman, who's more of a special teams guy, and a rookie as your 3 main linebackers are the guys, fighting it out for the 2 spots. The linebacker market's been crazy. I don't know how they're going to fill it. If Kenneth Murray's costing $9 million per season up to, how are you going to fill that? A lot of things still have to happen. So good news came in today. Still a ton of work to be done, and we'll be getting back into it tomorrow, including any news that comes out. So to make sure you don't miss it, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listen wherever you get your podcast from. We also want to get into a fan mail, though. We've been doing free agency Fridays. Obviously, if you have any free agency questions, you can ask us there. But we do want to get into a fan mail show for you guys. So hit us up on Twitter at LockedOnLAC. You can find me on Twitter at DanTalkSports and David Drogemeyer at DroTalkSD. You can also hit us up on Instagram at Locked On Chargers and our Locked On Chargers Facebook page, where you can be like a tier and call into the voicemail line at 323-524-7924. Leave a 30-second Chargers question, and it's likely to get on the show. We also have Will Dissly, new tight end, supposed to be talking to the media tomorrow, so we'll see if we can get anything from that as well. But any news, we'll be here because the everydayers know it's your team every day, and we'll be back with you guys tomorrow talking about the latest in this crazy free agency cycle. But until then, take it easy and go Bolts.